Good evening. This meeting is now called to order for the purpose stated in the duly posted meeting notice. The time is 4:34 p.m. Board members present are Trustee Skiller-Jones, Trustee Dr. Lita, Trustee Sang, Trustee Villaseca, Trustee Dygard, and myself, Trustee Davila. I would like to ask that everyone please silence their cell phones, and we are posted today for the public hearing on school financial integrity rating systems of schools first, which will be our first order of business. Dr. Latham. Oh, sorry.
I'm going to turn it over to our CFO, Dr. Renee Barajas, to present the financial integrity ratings information schools first report.
We've also been joined by Trustee Santos. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. The purpose of this hearing is to cover the results of the 2018-19 Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas Financial Management Report based on results from 2017-18, the school first objectives and the data that is being used, assessing the quality of financial management measures and reports to the extent which financial resources are allocated, so on and so forth. School first rating, as for the last several years, is based on 15 indicators. Your rating is based on the points you receive based on how you perform within each of those particular indicators. I'm happy to report that for the results of 17-18 presented in 18-19, HISD received yet again a rating of A or superior with 90 out of 100 points. Here is a summary of all the indicators, showing indicators for 18-19 as well as for 17-18. 17-18, of course, would have been based on results from 16-17. So 90 points for both fiscal years. So notes on indicator 2B. The reason why we did not get that is because we did have a material weakness reported in the 17-18 audit, which has been addressed and corrected by the Controller's Office. Indicator number 10, where we received no points out of the possible 10, as we did in previous years because of the particular accounting treatment that TEA uses for this indicator. We will probably not for the next foreseeable future receive any points on this indicator because we feel that this indicator is inadequate to measure our district's ability to repay debt. But it is what it is, and we can probably in the next month or two run the numbers for indicator number 10 and find out that we probably won't get those points. But take into consideration the recent Moody's Investor Services report indicated that HISD has over 500% of headroom. That's just their fancy way of saying that if need be, HISD has a potential at its maximum INS tax rate to collect 500% of its annual debt service needs. I don't know why TEA doesn't recognize a district like HISD, which can do that, but yet their particular indicator gives us no points on number 10. But nonetheless, we did receive 90 points, and we did receive an A yet again for the 18-19 school first. And that's all I have.
Questions? I can't, it's not popping up. Oh, Sue, go ahead. Trustee Dr.
Lathan, could we get a copy of this presentation? I appreciate that we have this, but it's like the layman's version of it is helpful too. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, this meeting is adjourned at 4:39. Good evening. This meeting of the board is now reconvened and open at 5:06 p.m. Board members present are Trustee Dygard, Trustee Santos, Trustee Sang, Trustee Dr. Lita, and myself, Trustee Davila. I would like to ask for everyone to please silence all cell phones. And please rise for a moment of silence meditation, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and the honors to the flag. She's yours.
So Cadet Diana Rodriguez will lead the Pledge of Allegiance and the honors to the Texas flag. Cadet Rodriguez attends Sam Houston Math, Science, and Technology Center, which is in District 1. Cadet Diana Rodriguez is the Executive Officer of the JROTC Battalion and a senior at Sam Houston Math, Science, and Technology Center. Diana has a 4.54 GPA and is currently ranked number 3 in her graduating class. She is the commander of the Academic and Leadership Team and a member of the Physical Training Team. In addition to JROTC activities, Diana is a member of Huddle, the debate program, robotics team, varsity mariachi, and a volunteer at Texas Children's Hospital, where she served over 96 hours during the summer. After graduation, Diana plans to attend Pitzer College and pursue a career in cardiology.
Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas Pledge. Honored in the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Cadet Rodriguez.
We've been joined by Trustee Adams. Before we begin our presentation, Dr. Latham, I'd like to take a moment, point of privilege, and introduce our 2 newly elected trustees. And if they'd like to come up here and say a few words, please feel free. Tonight we have with us Judith Cruz, trustee-elect. And we also have trustee-elect Daniela Hernandez. Did I get that right? Anybody want to say anything? No? Oh, well, you'll have plenty of time next month. Thank you, ladies. And Dr. Latham, you may now begin.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens would come on down, kind of like The Price is Right. This is her last board meeting. I want to thank you again, Ms. Stevens, for your hard work and your dedication to the children in HISD. She's going to present the board monitoring update. This is presentation of Constraint 3, progress measures 1 and 2. Ms. Stevens.
Thank you so much. President Davila, Superintendent Latham, Board Trustees. The Constraint Progress Measures 3.1 and 3.2 our presentation today. There we go. And Constraint 3 is that the superintendent will not allow struggling schools to operate without highly qualified leaders and teachers in core subjects. So the progress measures that we are doing to monitor this and specifically we're identifying struggling schools as those that are improvement required or now rated F, formerly improvement required, or schools that have an accountability scale score of 65 or less. So those would be the ones that are just on the cusp of being in that D range and could potentially fall into the F range. We also want to make sure that teacher qualifications consider certification and experience. It's also important to know that when we set this constraint, we started with the 2016 ratings, and we have continued to add schools but not take schools out. So every year we add schools to the struggling school list because we want to make sure that as schools do better and are no longer struggling, that we're continuing to monitor their progress in these measures. So you'll see now that we have added more schools to this. So Constraint Progress Measure 3.1 is looking at the percentage of campus administrators at these struggling schools that are rated as effective or above, and we want to make sure that it increases 2 percentage points annually. And for this year, we now have 94 campuses that are designated as struggling schools, which meet the definition that I explained. That's up from 86 last year and 85 the year before. We have exceeded our goal by having 80% of the principals at these campuses as being effective or highly effective. While it is a decrease from last year, we've also increased the number of campuses, and we've also increased the school leader appraisal system to not just be student performance driven. It was based on a scorecard, but this year is the first year, well, that 18-19 ratings that were used for 19-20 designations. It was the first year that we also include observations and walkthroughs for school leaders, just like we do for teachers. So now they're on a similar type of an appraisal system where they have the observations, walkthroughs, and student performance metrics included in their appraisal system. So we had 9 principals that did not have a rating, so they were excluded from that calculation. So of those 94 campuses, we had 85 that we looked at, and 80% of them were at effective or highly effective. The second progress measure is looking at first-year teachers, making sure that the percentage of first-year teachers in struggling schools decreases by 2 percentage points annually. And we did not meet the goal on this one. You can see that for the last 4 years, we have consistently maintained 10% of our teachers at the struggling campuses to be first-year teachers. For the 3,799 teachers at those 94 struggling schools, 385 of them were new teachers. Like I said, we've continued to increase the number of campuses every year that is included in this. The interesting thing to point out here that you can't see on this chart is the district rate of new teachers has maintained at 8% for the last 3 years as well. So we have held steady at the district at 8%, and we've held steady at the struggling campuses at 10%. And that concludes our presentation for today. The district's response and additional information is in the report that you were provided in your binder.
Questions from my colleagues? Oh, we've also been joined by Ms. Keller-Jones. Give us a minute to digest. Oh no, there's questions coming. We're going to let you go on your last day.
I thought my gift for tonight would be no questions.
No, today is not Christmas. I don't think we believe in that here in this district. Trustee Sung, followed by Trustee Santos, followed by Trustee Dr. Lita.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Lathan and Ms. Stevens for the presentation. Let's start with 3.1. So with regards to campus administrators, right, it's good to see that we're exceeding our goal. I do see that the percentage of campus administrators this year rated effective or above is 80% for those for whom we have ratings. Are these the principals or campus administrators that are, well, first of all, these are just principals or APs as well? It's campus administrators. Principals, okay. So campus administrators or principals, it's based on last year's rating?
Yes.
Okay.
So these are the campus principals that are leaving those campuses for 1920.
Okay.
Based on their appraisal ratings for 18-19.
Okay, and so then there's some presumably new principals, because there are some principals that weren't included in this calculation, so they have not yet received a rating.
Correct.
Okay. And so Dr. Lathan, so it's great to see we're achieving the goal, but the trend line is the opposite of the way we'd like to see it go. So I'd like to ask for your commentary on that, and then what support do you need from us with regards to this goal?
So just want to go back to one of the points that Ms. Stevens shared, is that we changed or added additional requirements to the principal's appraisal system for the previous year. And so you're going to notice that when you change and add some additional requirements or components, you'll notice that you see sometimes a lower percentage. But as it relates to the supports, we have the supports. We just need to work through that and work through the process. But it was something, I want to say last year when we presented this, that was a question asked as it relates to the teacher appraisal process and the principal appraisal process. And we are actually trying to be more consistent with teacher appraisals and also principal appraisals.
What are the new components in the principal appraisal system?
Yes, it again. Share that again.
It's adding the observations and the walkthroughs.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then with regards to teachers, right, I know part of the strategy we've used is at struggling schools, right, this board funds additional stipends, right, in our budgets for teachers at least some of our struggling schools, right? And I'm wondering, are there other resources or supports that we need to help make sure that we've got experienced, the best we have, high quality and experienced teachers at the schools that need them the most?
So we have a combination actually of incentives through not only the incentives through our Achieve 180 program, but also, if you recall, we received a grant 2 years ago. Now we've been year 3 now of our TSL grant. That was that $46 million grant that we received. And so it also helps us provide stipends to principals and teachers that go to struggling campuses and provides opportunities for professional development and additional supports. And so part of what we're doing as a district now is working our plan. And being consistent and implementing our professional practices with fidelity. And so we just need to just keep working it.
Okay. So you feel like next year is the year that we see a movement in this line?
We're going to do our best. Because you will remind me if I say absolute yes. So we will do our best.
Okay. Well, that's what we hope to see. Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Santos?
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. I did not know you were leaving as a surprise. I'm very sorry to hear that. We appreciate you. I know I appreciate you. Just want to say thank you for your service. President Davila, Dr. Lathan, I do have a couple of questions. So when teachers miss school, our kids don't learn. So what is the teacher attendance like in our Achieve 180 schools?
Okay, since that is not one of the metrics that we're presenting today, I don't have that information available, but I can provide that if it is submitted as a board referral.
Okay, I would like to enter that. I'm going to piggyback off of what Trustee Sung was saying. So some incentives that we could provide, and I was going to preface it with this. I had experience of being a parent with school-age children when I had temporary custody of 2 children myself, and that was very, very hard. I was commuting back and forth. I was a teacher. It was very difficult to be able to take children, being a single parent, yada, yada, yada. And what I would suggest to incentivize teachers that want experienced teachers to go into struggling campuses is in offering free daycare. And I know that back then Davis, now Northside, had daycare. I believe Waltrip had it as well. So if we did that for our struggling schools, then maybe teachers with more experience would want to stay or want to go to those schools. So that's something, and I don't know how feasible that is, Dr. Lathan, but I would need to put that out there. Ms. Stevens, so out of the 94 campuses, which of these are high schools? Which high schools are these?
I don't have the specific list with me, but I can provide that to you.
Please, and also, Dr. Lathan, I know this is just a coincidence, I guess, because I just had a baby. Teachers are now emailing me, asking about maternity leave, that we don't have any in HISD, and so I'd like to kind of, my colleagues and my future colleagues, maybe we could start working on that. So, I'm sorry, paternity and maternity, just parental leave, right? So, well, we have FMLA, but I don't know if y'all have ever used that. I went without a paycheck for like 6 months. So, yeah, it's pretty bad. Well, we can discuss that moving forward, right? So, okay, I do have another question on the principal camp side, but I'll wait. Thank you.
Till January. Dr. Lira.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Interim Superintendent. A couple of questions, Ms. Stevens. I know that the teachers use a evaluation system, TADS, I believe. Mm-hmm. What evaluation systems are they using for the principals to assess whether or not they're effective?
Sure. It's called the School Leader Appraisal System, or SLAS. We have to have acronyms for everything, so TADS for teachers and SLAS for the principals. and other Tier 2 leaders. So that's for the principals, the assistant principals, and deans of instruction. It has two components now as of the 18-19 school year that has observations and walkthroughs based on rubrics, and then there's also a scorecard. And previously, it was only just the scorecard. The scorecard includes STAR metrics, other student outcomes that are appropriate for the level. So there are certain outcomes that are appropriate for high school, some for elementary and some for middle. Graduation and dropout are included on the high school one. Advanced placement is also included on the high school one. Attendance is included on all of them. There's also metrics that hold them accountable for the accountability rating that they get, and then also for effective and highly effective teachers, making sure that they retain them and that they are exiting ineffective teachers. But that's more of a district metric because they want everybody to work together as a district as a whole on that one.
So the assessment tool used for principals is a district, it's not a statewide assessment tool.
No, it is a district created.
And I'm assuming that maybe the superintendent can answer this, but if they're rated ineffective or not proficient, I'm assuming that these principals will go on a similar PPA or a growth plan?
Yes.
Okay. My other question is the first-year teacher, well, there's a dip in terms of the number of effective administrators from 2018 to 2019, this is page 5. By 7 percentage point at the struggling schools, but also is there a correlation between the principals' effectiveness and also the schools where they have the most struggling first-year teachers? Do you see a correlation?
We have not looked at the two of them together. We have not done any kind of cross tabs based on principal effectiveness and first-year teachers. If that's a request, we could do it, but it is not something we've done in response to this request or this presentation.
Well, I'd like to submit a board referral on that, but I think there may be some surprising results, or perhaps not surprising in the sense that those campuses that have first-year struggling, campuses with first-year teachers, may also have the same time principals that are also struggling. I can rest assured that that's probably the high probability that exists. But what's more important is that it's nothing new. What are the strategies to make sure that these numbers, instead of decreasing, actually go up?
Right.
Thank you.
Trustee Dygard.
Thank you. And I am sad that this is your last meeting. I'm sure you're probably, this is like early Christmas, right? So first of all, I want to ask a clarifying question for my understanding, because what I noticed was while we are exceeding our goal on the campus administrators rated effective or above, we are declining, and that's been pointed out already, but at the same time, we've had an increase in the number of campuses that meet the criteria for this constraint, correct? So there becomes some things to unpack in that, in my mind. And so what came to be curious, my curiosity about all of this, or what I'm wanting to understand about this, is which of these campuses are we maintaining? Where are the problems? Are we able to maintain once we have, maybe this is a better question for the superintendent, are we able to maintain, once we've placed an effective principal in a school, are we able to maintain it, or are we losing them after they're already there? There are multiple related questions here. You mentioned that there is a new way of, there's an additional metric by which we're evaluating the principals. Is that what attributed to this dip? Or have we started putting principals at some of these campuses that previously had a principal that was rated as effective, but even under the old metrics wouldn't have been rated as effective? So I'm trying to figure out which of the principals, not school specific, but which sort of cohort of principals are leading to this overall decline. Does that make sense? Did I pack too many different variables into one question?
Yes and
Okay.
yes. I think I understand what you're trying to get at. We did not dig much deeper into this other than to identify, what the ratings were of the principals. We know how many were highly effective. So of the 85 that we actually had ratings on, we know that 8 of them were highly effective and 60 were effective. And the ones that were not were needs improvement. So they weren't ineffective, so they weren't the lowest rating. They were just that next tier down below effective. So we don't have what you're wanting to know is kind of the cohort. As we're adding new schools, we didn't break this out by, is this a struggling campus that has been identified as struggling, or is this a new struggling campus? We did
So
not
we
do
don't know who we have where.
We do, and we have provided that information. So we actually, when we did this, we created an Excel spreadsheet that had the campus name, the principal's name, and all of the information. We gave it to HR. So the district knows where all of this is so that we could make sure that we're addressing it. It just was not information that was added to the public.
So I guess to try and refine my question a little bit, because I'm trying to understand why, as a board member, why this decline, what's attributed to it. It could be that the change in the metrics ticked it down, everybody came down just a little bit. It could be that these 9 new campuses that have been added this year to this, or actually it's 8 this year plus 1 the year before. So let's just say 8 because we've gone from 87 down to 80, that it's just at those 8 campuses, maybe the reason they got added to the list is they didn't have a highly effective principal, or did principals leave that were not highly effective. They have to be effective or above, rated as effective or above, left. And if we put any teachers in any of these campuses this year, if we placed principals at them that weren't rated effective?
So we do know that there's probably impacts from each one of those things. So adding the new metrics did affect some of the ratings. It did make people more effective, also made people less effective. It adjusted their ratings in both directions. We also know that some of the principals that left were highly effective and effective, but we also know we lost, I think, about 12 principals last year that were needs improvement. So we have some principals that have left that should have left. We also have some that we were hoping to keep, but probably were not able to. We also have replaced them with both effective and highly effective and some needs improvement. So there's been a combination of all of those. It's not going to be just one of those things that will have caused it. So each of the things that you picked out has both helped and hindered.
Okay.
And has caused that number to go from 87 to 80.
So, but there's an important thing that I just heard there, that for these 94 campuses, in some cases we lost a principal that was effective or highly effective and replaced them with one that was needs improvement.
I don't know if it was replacing that one. I'm saying as a whole.
Okay. So
As a group.
so then the most important question, have we replaced any principals at any of these schools where a highly effective or effective principal has left for whatever reason, replaced them with a principal that wasn't effective or highly effective? We have not? Okay. Okay, that's, I think, probably at the core of my series of questions. What are our challenges? Because this means that we still have principals that are in these schools that are rated as needs improvement. What are our challenges to getting them to effective? What are the challenges? what are the challenges to getting them to effective? What do we need to know to help you meet this constraint?
I think what I shared earlier, we need to work our professional development plan that we have in place for our principals, but we also need to be able to retain and attract principals, and so that a lot of that ties back to principal salaries, not only principal salaries, but also assistant principal salaries.
Is that something you are considering for next year's budget then?
Every budget cycle, I consider compensation for teacher groups, administrator groups, because those are the people we need in the buildings and in the classrooms.
Okay. And your strategies for this constraint, am I presuming there's something in the district improvement plan around them?
Part of our principal professional development plan and professional development plan around instruction all ties back to always starting with the building leaders, and then we move that down to our teacher groups.
So was that articulated in the district improvement plan?
How it's broken out, I can't tell you right now because it's not in front of me, but at the end of the day, we have a professional development plan for our principals and our Tier 2 leaders. And we, throughout the course of the school year, we're working with them around instructional strategies and ways to improve performance and student outcomes on their individual campuses.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Villaseca.
Thank you so much again for the presentation. Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and we can keep it on this slide for now. I know we've had continuing dialogue on this. I just want to clarify one more time. The 9 principals without a rating is either because they were new, so they're new principals, not necessarily new principals, period, but maybe new to the district, or APs moving into principalship.
So I can tell you what they are. So of the 9, 2 of them were principals last year at campuses that didn't receive a rating. It was Young Scholars and Inspired Academy, so they are not our principals. They're charter schools, so we did not have ratings for them, so that's 2. 6 of them were not in a district leadership position, so they may have had appraisal ratings under the non-instructional, like my appraisal rating, but not under the school leader appraisal system. And 1 was an assistant principal who did not receive a leadership rating. Others, if there were assistant principals that were promoted that had received a school leader and SLAS rating, they would have been included in the calculation.
Okay, thank you for clarifying one more time. Okay, so a couple of things. I'm wondering then, so out of the 94 campuses that are part of this group that we're looking at, how many of them are also a part of Achieve 180? Because not all 94 are part of Achieve 180, right? Okay, and as part of the Achieve 180 program, there are different incentives and different things that are built into that and that we've allocated as a board to help with the placement and to assist with that. So I'm wondering, as we're considering this upcoming budget cycle, if we need to broaden or look at that in a way that's going to be inclusive to help with all of our, just a bigger chunk of our historically underserved campuses and campuses that are deemed struggling with the state.
We actually started that conversation as a leadership team last week, the schools office and academics team. We had our first retreat for 2021 last week, and so we've started that discussion to look at how we group our Achieve 180 campuses, but also how we assign schools across the other areas of the district. For example, the West area is a large area, a large number of schools, and so we're looking at, do we need to break that area out a little bit more? And so we're starting that conversation, also starting the conversation around what the supports will look like for various campuses. If you think about these 94, but then tiering, let's just say we put these 94 campuses in different tiers, what does the support look like for a Tier 1 campus, a Tier 2 campus, and Tier 3 campus?
Okay. Thank you. Another thing that I am curious about, if you go actually to page 12 in our packet, when you actually look at the constraint progress measure, and I know that we're going to be revisiting these as a team in January or February. Yes, this one. Okay. So I'm wondering, I mean, we set this back in, I believe it's 2017, right? So we're coming to a close and we're going to be reevaluating and making some adjustments. But I'm wondering because in that first year, it seems that we really blew this out of the water. And I'm wondering if it was a constraint that was rigorous enough for what we have the power to do as far as selecting, recruiting, retaining, our leaders and our staff and our teachers at the school. So I'm wondering if we need to reconsider this, and because it seemed like it was easily attainable, which is great, and we rocked it out of the park, but we still have some room for improvement. So when we think about it, maybe we'll have that conversation again. It was just something that came to mind.
Yes.
Okay, let's see here. You can go to packet page 15. Just curious it seems like this has been something that hasn't changed year over year for the last 4 years as far as percentage of first-year teachers at struggling schools. I see that there's a bullet point here saying that out of all of the teachers that we have assigned in the district, the 10% were new to the struggling schools. So I'm curious as to why this hasn't changed much in the last 4 years, what your reflection is on that.
That's a great question, and one of for these struggling campuses, our goal is, of course, to recruit and try to get experienced teachers to those campuses. But as there are still vacancies across the district, of vacancies at these campuses, and when you have experienced teachers that want to stay at their campus, and sometimes their campus is not as challenging as some of these campuses, it makes it hard. It also makes it hard as you think about trying to recruit people. We've held some specialized recruiting fairs for people to try to get them interested in our Achieve 180 campuses, our struggling campuses. Like I said, we have the incentives not only through Achieve 180, but the TSL grant, but it's still a struggle and it's still an uphill battle to get more experienced teachers to some of our campuses. And we're going to keep trying so that we have more experienced teachers and we reduce the number of new teachers. But there are times that we do have to fill positions with new teachers on some of these campuses. And so then our goal, working with the academics department, is then providing support for those first-year teachers on the struggling campuses.
I wonder, as part of the TSL grant, what year are we in for that? Three. Year 3. And 2 more years? I'm not sure we've heard that it's been extended from the Department of Ed. It was a guaranteed 3. It was to be years 4 and 5 were based on approval from the department. And so I think we're still waiting on approval. Okay. And the campuses that are receiving the aid that comes through that federal fund are outside of Achieve 180? Or somewhere Achieve 180?
Some are Achieve 180s and some are outside of Achieve 180.
Okay. I'm wondering, in the conversations that as part of the recruitment team, has there been any, any instances where there have been like clusters of like effective leaders and teachers that have been willing to move sort of as a team to go like sort of together kind of thing, to go? I don't know.
I'm not sure about the policy.
Is there? Right. Don't mean that. Okay.
Did we write a policy?
Okay.
Or we just internally upholding, not allowing that to happen?
I don't think there's I just want to do it.
Okay. All right, well, that's it. I don't want that. I didn't want that to happen, and I guess that already happened. Okay. All right. I think that's all. Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you again for your many, many, many years of service to our district. We're going to miss you. Happy holidays, Carlin. Thank you.
You too. Trustee Santos, followed by Trustee Dygard.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick, I promise. The worst thing that could have happened is that I have 4 weeks at home because then I got all the phone calls. So when advocating for equity, we need to look at our blind spots, colleagues and Dr. Lathan. that's why listening to our community and learning from our mistakes is a huge commitment that we should make. And Ms. Stevens and Dr. Lathan, does the community get an input or a say-so on what an effective principal is or is not?
That is not a part of the teacher nor principal appraisal system.
So community engagement is also not part of the principal evaluation?
Correct.
Okay. And so, this first question is going to be rhetorical, so don't respond. But, so can you show me what an effective principal versus a struggling principal looks like? So you could say, Mr. Busby is an awesome principal and Mr. So-and-so is not. And then you pair them. What my point is that sometimes it's apples and sometimes it's oranges, and you can't put them together. They're completely juxtaposed. Outstanding principals sometimes have low scores, but I know for a fact that when I go onto campuses, or I have been on campuses, kids and the community are organically learning, and their scores may not reflect that. And I know that our evaluation system for principals is not as healthy as it should be. With that, I've been receiving a lot of complaints from the community saying about certain principals that people deem very highly effective. And that's why my question about the community engagement is here. Additionally, this is another referral about the referrals. So the referral responses, because I want to learn from my mistakes, I think they need to have a little more depth and a little more details as to when things are resolved, how are they resolved, and so forth, so I can go back to my community and say, or to our communities and say, this is why it happened, and this is what we did to resolve what the district did to resolve the situation. So I guess that's could we have, what would it take to have a community input piece for a principal evaluation? Dr. Lathan.
Part of the decision around the principal appraisal is responsibility of the superintendent along with HR, and so right now that's not a part of our school leaders appraisal system, so we would have to discuss that further. But we also just want to be careful when issues are resolved as they relate to personnel. We do not publicly share that out, and so sometimes we are very limited in the information that can be shared, and I know sometimes it's frustrating to parents and also staff members, but every employee is entitled to that protection and confidentiality.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's why the community engagement piece is so important, because instead of demonizing, let's say, one person, it's about community input and how it's received. So that's why referrals, having them be a little more detailed would be beneficial for not just the trustees, the administration, and the community, so we know exactly where we're at and not to make those same mistakes again. There's one more thing about the teachers, but we'll save it for when you're not around. So.
It's January.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
Trustee Dykar, followed by Trustee Skiller-Jones, and we've also been joined by Ms. Jalon Jones.
I have a question about Measure 3.2. So, and it's similar to with the principals, we've had an increase in the number of schools. Therefore, the overall quantity of teacher positions, because there are more schools or more teacher positions, would be one possible reason that we have stayed at this 10%, correct?
Yes, and if you look at packet page 19,
yes, that's what I'm looking at.
That will tell you those numbers.
Correct.
So you can see that out of the 85 campuses in 17-18, we had 357 new teachers. Out of the 86 campuses in 18-19, we had 360 new teachers. And out of the 94 struggling campuses in 19-20, we had 385 new teachers. All of them were roughly 10%.
So the question I have is, where are these teachers? Are these, if we only looked at the 86 campuses that we had last year, so we're comparing apples to apples, would we be moving in the right direction on those campuses where we have a decline in the percentage of first-year teachers? Like, where are these are they at the schools that have just been added? Are they at the existing schools that were already being looked at in this measure? Or is it just a bit of both?
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. We
Okay.
have to go back and look at it.
And then the question I have for the superintendent is what are your top two challenges in making progress on this constraint? Especially as we evaluate these moving forward.
My top challenge is, once again, is trying to get experienced teachers to go to some of our most challenging schools when they are at schools that are not as challenging. And so once again, we have to look at our not only our compensation packages, but also the other incentives that we can provide teachers and administrators.
And finally, again, as we're going to be evaluating these and as we update our goals and our constraints, do you feel that this constraint has helped you achieve better outcomes for the students at this cohort of campuses?
It's always a focus. I mean, it's like a yes and a no. I'll be very honest with you. It's always going to be our focus to try to have the most experienced teachers. So with or without a constraint, that's the focus. And that's the focus of moving forward and improving student outcomes. So these constraints are guides, but at the end of the day, when you're focused on leading and guiding a district and leading and guiding schools, you know what you need. You know what the right combinations of resources you need, both human capital and also other resources.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Skeeler-Jones? Okay. Okay, so you're up next.
And this sparked because I see the board members from another school district, so it sparked this question, and it's probably more for Julia regarding this. But I know in some districts, they only hire for the openings at whatever particular schools there are, or because their HRs are structured differently from ours. Where there's an opening, that's what they hire for, or when they hire, you're assigned to a school. Because I know the way we do it was falling to a lot of the school districts in TASB when we went there. So does that have any bearing? I mean, the way we're structured and set up, does that have any bearing on why we have new teachers at certain places and openings at certain places?
It could. We don't assign teachers. Teachers choose where they want to go when we hire them. To your point, the first part of what you were asking, was it about we don't hire till we have an actual opening? Was that part of what, I didn't hear the first part.
Yeah, so like if let's just say there's two openings at two struggling schools, do we not hire specifically for those two openings? Like say, we have opening here, this is what we're hiring for now.
Not exactly. We hire teachers and put them in the teacher pool, and we have that available for the principals to choose who they want to hire. So, like we may be looking for math teachers, we may be looking for English teachers, because we know those are high needs areas, and we guide people if they look like they're going to be a good match with experience, like what Dr. Lathan was saying. Like she was referring to the early job fairs. We're doing that a lot now, pairing up what we think would be a good fit with experience and content area to our struggling campuses, but we don't say we're going to hire you and you're going to X school. We don't do that.
Yeah,
And some other districts do.
I want to say it's not fair, I'm not sure.
I believe they do.
But that's the way some of them do it, and they have like 100% staff schools. Okay.
Yes.
Any more questions, Ms. Keeler-Jones? Dr. Lita?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Interim Superintendent. Quick question. I know that when there's, because I evaluated a lot of teachers in my tenure in high schools, and I know those that are in struggling classroom and core subjects are, I would say, generally speaking, under a lot of, they're under the microscope for student performances. But my question is, they're evaluated by campus principals, administrators, and then the principals are evaluated using this new instrument. So who evaluates the principal? Would that be the immediate SSO? Yes. And then who evaluates their SSOs if this becomes a consistent problem after several years?
The area superintendent's
to
evaluation.
the area superintendent. So in actuality, just by following this line of thought, the area superintendent, the SSOs are really responsible to what's happening in terms of what that effectiveness of this campus and moving these numbers upwards. Would you agree to that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, no further questions. Yep. Do I have a motion to approve the presentation as given to us? Thank you. Please vote. Motion carries 9-4-0 against and 0 abstentions. We are now to a portion of hearing of the community. We have some students that are here today present to. Please note that we are conducting our hearing of the community in two parts in order to prioritize our students who are signed up to speak. The guidelines remain the same. Only those individuals who register by 9:30 a.m. today may speak this evening. Also, copies or handouts of materials must have been provided by the to board services by 9:30 a.m. today. We have 3 student speakers registered to speak this evening. The total number of allotment for the speakers shall not exceed 30 minutes. Speakers during the hearing of the community shall be limited to 2 minutes each. I'd like to remind speakers that when addressing the board, please stay on topic and refrain from naming individuals, especially other students, as they are protected under the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. Please understand that this is a public forum that does not allow for dialogue from the board members. The board cannot deliberate or respond directly to a speaker in this format. So that each person who has signed up to speak can be heard by the board, we ask that there be no disruption of the meeting by members of the audience, no abusive statements or actions, no threats or confrontations, no audible expressions by the audience of approval or disapproval. We ask that you please speak directly into the microphone. The clock on the wall to the right and on the podium will count down your time and will signal when your time is up. I ask that you please respect our procedures and that speakers and other speakers and end your remarks promptly when your time has expired. Would Virmania Villalobos please come to the podium? Also, would Nathan Granados and Gabriela Canepa please come to the front and sit in the reserved seats 1, 2, and 3 in order to in which I called you? This is the order in which you will be speaking. All right, so let's find out who's here. Birmania, is that? And correct me if I'm wrong.
My name is Virmania Villalobos. I'm here to thank Dr. Lita and Trustee Davila for always being there for the East End community, teachers, and students. Thank you for adding community schools in our rapid series. We love our school. We just don't like all the testing. It is very stressed. It affects our students. Just last week, I was slapped around by other students. So if you think all this testing does not affect us, you are wrong. It does affect us. If testing stress equals violence, then we need to also have other ways to relax. You forgot we are still a child and we need to enjoy life too. Numbers count for you, but enjoying what we learn is important to us. Please don't forget we are still child. We're really going to miss you so much for supporting us, Dr. Lita and Trustee Davila.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nathan Granados. I am a 5th grade student from Perry Rucker Elementary, and I am here to speak about the TEA takeover. And it's stressful and embarrassing to be known as a district that will be taken over. My school was never a F school. We work very hard, but we do not receive equal funds that school on the other side of town receive. I am a proud East End stakeholder, and deserve the same quality education that a student from a magnet or charter school receives. I am also a straight A student that is proud of my school and his teachers. I do not have to go to a magnet school to thrive. I just want to ask you to respect our school teachers and my fellow students. I learned to have a voice because one of my teachers taught me that I have a voice to speak up responsibly and never bow my head down. Thank you, Dr. Lita and Trustee Davila, for believing in the East End and standing up for students, teachers, and our community. And we will miss you very much. And this year I had the opportunity to attend the Democratic debate. I met Joe Biden, Julian Castro, Elizabeth Warren, and Beto. Also a very important person, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. So you see, I didn't have to go to a magnet or charter school to thrive. Thank you. I also have a question. Why don't the students rate the principal, and what makes an effective principal? Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Gabriel, is Gabriel here? No? Okay. Gabriel Canepa? Yeah. Okay. Good. Walk in just in time. You have 2 minutes.
I'm a student, my name's Gabriel Canepa. I'm a student at HSPVA downtown. And my main concern that I'm speaking about is the school lunches and nutrition that we have. So I'm a dance major at HSPVA. So I'm a very active student, and I feel that the nutrition that we're receiving at our school isn't what we need exactly for physically active students. So I just wanted to come and voice that.
That's it. Thank you. All right, we have now come to the portion of our meeting where we hear from the public. However, we have no speakers registered for agenda items this evening. So Merry Christmas to all of us. So we will move on to trustee discussions. Consideration of the superintendent's agenda items. We are now ready to move on agenda items. For the record, let it be reflected that agenda items A2, A3, A4, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, and B6, and L2, bingo, were added with attachments, and attachments were revised to agenda items B3, B4, I2, and I3. Board policy requires trustees to excuse themselves and abstain from all discussions and votes pertaining to contracts that might involve a conflict of interest, as defined in Board Policy BBFA Local. A conflict of interest is any circumstances that could cast doubt on a trustee's ability to act with total objectivity with regards to the district's interests. Starting with the trustee to my far right and continuing over to my left, would each trustee state any agenda item for which the trustee would abstain based on conflict of interest requirement, or which will also be held for separate discussion. Trustee Skiller-Jones.
None other than what I've seen.
Okay. Dr. Lira.
No abstention.
Trustee Sung.
No abstentions. However, I would like to ask that we pull A3 and A4 for discussion.
A3 and A4?
Yes. Thank you.
Trustee Santos.
No abstentions and same as Ann.
Okay. Trustee Villaseca.
No abstentions, B2, and I just have a question on I4B.
I4B?
Yes, and I6.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Jones?
No abstentions, and what I wanted to talk about has already been pulled.
Trustee Dygard?
No abstentions, and I'd like to pull B1 for discussion.
Have that on there. Trustee Adams? None? All right, we're going to start with A3. Trustee Sung? Oh, may I have a wait. Our first item, I'm trying to go in order, but my script says B1. So that were requested. All right. So I'm gonna go by this then. All right. Then we'll go back to A3 and A4, Trustee Santos. That's okay. So that way I won't forget it later on because I've done that before. Our item held for discussion and agenda item is B1, consider 2018-2019 final Lone Star Governance Annual Board Evaluation. And I do believe Trustee Dygard, you requested this item?
I did.
May I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Trustee Dygard.
Okay, so I'd like to move that we, on accountability 2, change it and remain at 0 for accountability 2. As the notes say in here, we're using the district improvement plan to count as the plan in that accountability 2 rubric, and point 5 would have us preparing to focus. However, if you look through the district improvement plan, I do not feel we have worked with the superintendent to align the district improvement plan with Lone Star governance. And I think that's something that we should work on for the coming year. For example, while Goal 1 for elementary curriculum is the same as Board Goal 1, the goal for college readiness is around technology. And additionally, some campus improvement plans are aligned with Lone Star governance, but most are not. I like that the district improvement plan is moving in that direction. This is not at all a criticism of the administration. This is, I believe that the board should be doing better work with the superintendent on next year's district improvement plan so that we can align these two things together. Also, preparing to focus for accountability states that the board has, that the plan includes both an implementation timeline and measures. And the timelines, and I don't really see any measures, but there just seem to be a range of dates without really a timeline of progress towards the items to be implemented with measures of progress towards those. And that's what I think would be more in the spirit of this measure on accountability 2. Therefore, I move that we remain at 0 for accountability 2.
We're at half a point. Is there a second to the motion? Thank you, Trustee Jones, and I want to remind that we do have 3 minutes total for our agenda items. There's been a motion and no second, so we go back to B1 in its original version. Any discussion on B1? Okay, there being none. There being none, please vote on item B1. Motion carries 8-4, 1 against, 0 abstention. Next item held for discussion is agenda item B4, received and act on audit department goals for 2019 and 2020 performance period. Trustee Dygard? Oh, do I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Dygard?
I pulled B2.
It has, B4 it has it.
We went by the procedures that the board had in place is when trustees have emailed us in advance by the cutoff of the items that they wanted pulled off of consent. So that's why this group is following the process.
But you don't have a question or anything?
I originally emailed B5, but I meant B1, and I sent an email clarifying that today.
We changed it. You had B1.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, we still have it here. If there's no
about the audit department goal?
B4. Yeah. If there is no discussion on this item, then we can vote on it. So let's clear so we can vote on B4. Okay. All right, please vote on B4. Motion carries 8-4, 1 against, and 0 abstentions. Next item, that was held for discussion is agenda item B6, adoption of resolution to appoint Elizabeth Santos to Board of Directors of the Harris County Appraisal District. Ms. Skiller-Jones? Do I have a motion first? I'm sorry. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Skiller-Jones?
Yeah, I didn't have background information on this. So, one, why was that being done? And two, isn't on appointments typically done in January when the board changes over?
If that's a question for me. I went back and I looked, and for Harris County Appraisal District, Lisa, first I'm going to refer to Lisa in reference to this for clarification, and then actually, secondly, but when I went back and looked, this was approved in 2017 in October, and then in 2015 it was also approved in October. So I'm actually late, but I'll let Lisa explain the second part.
Yes. Good evening, board members. Yes, the school district received notice from, I believe it was Harris County, giving different entities deadlines by which to let the county know of their appointments. And for the school district, the deadline is December 14th. I did look at your past agenda items, and typically in October or November of odd-numbered years is when this item comes up. Then again, when the board reorganizes in January and there's a new president, that president has a slate of appointments. That appointment that's made in November or October of the previous odd-numbered year is just reiterated in that slate, but you've technically already done it by the deadline that's given to Harris County.
Ms. Adams, are you not wanting to serve in this capacity anymore?
Thank you. First of all, I didn't know anything about it. To see it on the agenda, and I actually sent an email to the president asking the president to serve again, and I never received a response from the president saying yes or no, and then I see it on the agenda item. First of all, I consider it disrespect for not notifying me to say that the appointment was going to be changed, and I was part of the discussion when it was sent here, and I just think it's just disrespectful. I think under various terms, I think we've always notified the individual, but I did send notice to her and asking her to reserve this last term. She never responded. And so this is the first time I saw it. I heard it from someone called me like last week and said that I see the changes, and I said no, I did not. So, I mean, that's just how it went down. And actually, it would be great if the new president comes on and they make that appointment or who that person chooses. But yes, I did ask to serve this last year that's coming up, but I never heard a response. This was my first time seeing it, and it was never asked, so I never saw that it was going to be changed. So there was no communication to me. But I communicated and asked to be served again, but there was no response back to me either way, and this has showed up. So I think that's a disrespect of the current member that actually sits on the board right now. And right now, it's a critical time that we're discussing for change in the middle. And I asked for this item to be pulled, but I see it did not get pulled. But for the next board members to have the opportunity to select who they want next year.
Thank you, Trustee Adams. Trustee Jones, and don't forget, we're supposed to be timing our colleagues. Okay, I just don't see the, so you have the clock over there. We just can't say, you have a different clock. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Trustee.
So I'm just going to say that since I've been on the board, I can't speak about what happened before I got on the board, but since I got on the board, the incoming president got to put who they wanted on stuff. They sent out an email, say, what committees do you want to serve on, and you let them know what you want to serve on. I believe it is that the new incoming president, whoever it is, should have that privilege to be able to do that, because that's why you get to be president. So I heard all the other stuff that happened, but I know in practicality, there was 1 year, I think, where somebody did something early, and I voted against that too, because I think the incoming president, whoever it is, should do that. It was established, and I certainly don't think somebody who is no longer going to be the president, who got beat 65-35, should be making long-term decisions for the school board because her constituents spoke, and they spoke loudly.
Ms. Skiller-Jones.
Yes, so I wasn't done. Was there something that you deemed dissatisfactory about Ms. Adams' service that prompted this?
No, and there was an email exchange between Trustee Adams and myself. I asked what process had been used prior. In 2015, I think you selected her for appointment. And then there were also District 1, 5, 6, and 8, and 9 that were up for election. And so the decision was still made in October of 2015, just to be clear about that. And in 2017, I think Trustee Adams appointed herself to serve. She was the board president then. And then we had District 1, 5, 6, 7, and 9 that were all up for election. So this is always going to happen. But a reminder that we do have a deadline with the county that has to be met. And I actually was going to take it a step further and put it in a policy where it revolves around every single board member's district. I think Larry served at that capacity for over a decade, and then Mr. Lunsford served for 4 years, and Ms. Adams, I think you've been at that capacity now 6 years. So I think it's only fair because everyone's constituency up here in this board pays taxes, and for Harris County should have the opportunity to be able to go through the process and represent their constituency at the same time. So that is the rationale with me choosing someone new to represent us at the Harris County Appraisal District. Again, this is not anything new. This is something that was practiced by you, Trustee Skiller-Jones, and you, Trustee Adams. Again, it's always going to happen that it's going to be during an election year cycle. And Harris County has their deadlines, and we don't have control over that either.
So I actually have served on the TASB board for 7 years and been reappointed the entire time. I'm actually leaving the board, and we'll have a vacancy there in January, and nobody's moved to fill that. And I'm not actually even going to be on the board. So, but we're leaving that for...
That usually doesn't happen until January, traditionally, even when there's new board members elected. So we leave that until then when the new board president and new trustees come on board. Again, there is a deadline that we have to meet with Harris County in order for us to continue to have representation in HISD. Trustee Adams?
I don't have a disagreement about the policy and the procedure and how it's done. I'm just saying the disrespect of not knowing that it was done. And I don't want to prolong this discussion anymore because we need to continue on the board items. So whatever the pleasure of the board it is, I'm just considering a disrespect on how it was done and not being notified. Because personally, I would not have done that, but I would ask for us just to move on, and however it's going to be decided, it's going to be decided at the pleasure of the board.
All right.
I just want us to move on.
All right. With no further discussion, please vote on this item. B6. Motion carries 6-4, 3 against, and 0 abstentions. Next, we consider acceptance of the balance of today's agenda by consensus. We are now ready to consider the balance of today's agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the balance? What did I miss?
I think you have some more pulled agenda items that weren't...
Oh, that's right. Let me go back. So let's go back to A3. Do I have a motion for A3? Trustee Santos. I'm sorry, and Trustee Sung.
Thank you, Madam President. So I believe this is the item that we post. And first of all, let me apologize. I didn't know that we had to request that A items be pulled. I certainly would have done that along the timeline, but I just had assumed that since these were goal progress monitoring, that they would be up for discussion. So my apologies for not pulling this earlier. So A3, I believe this is the item that we postponed from last month because some of the data, the socioeconomic data hadn't been updated, right? Since we really didn't have very thorough discussion last month of this. So my first question is, Dr. Latham, what has changed in this report since last month? Because I think the request was that the data be updated to reflect more accurate student data.
If you will turn to packet page 30.
That's where the data was updated. It's for goal progress measure 4.1. Now that we have more accurate information on economically disadvantaged and not economically disadvantaged students as of the October PEIMS, because we had pulled this earlier at the beginning of October, and so not everyone was coded. You can see that we did see, as we had seen the prior month in October, a decrease by just a little bit from 73 to 71. The percent of students who were at or above baseline for benchmark for the BOY. This is in reading and in math on Renaissance. So we are starting the year now for 2019-20 at 71, which is a little bit better than what we had seen when we had students who were not completely accurately coded as economically disadvantaged. The economically disadvantaged number is at 38. Therefore, the gap is 33, which is maintaining the gap as to where we started at this point in time last year.
Okay, thank you. So what we're seeing then for our students in the with the universal screener is summer slide, right, is how I'm going to interpret this. From the end of your last year, right, and I know these are different cohorts of students, but overall for the district, right, we ended the year last year with students at 74, and we see a slide now to the beginning of the year down to 71. And then for our economically disadvantaged students from 45 to 38. So it's a greater slide for students who are economically disadvantaged, which, I mean, is what we tend to see in schools. What's concerning to me is that the slide seems larger this year. Well, a couple of things. One is that we're starting from further behind for our eco-test students than we were a year ago, and that slide seems to be bigger. So I'm wondering, I'm looking at our training from last month on goal progress monitoring. So I'm wondering, why do these gaps exist between student groups? And then, given that we have this happening, what are we going to do, and what can we do differently this year?
What we can do differently next summer, of course, and we've talked about this as a team, of course, is providing more opportunities, extending the amount of time that we have for summer learning or summer traditional summer school or summer enrichment and intervention. So those are some things that we've discussed as providing more weeks of more opportunities for our students.
Okay, great, thank you, that makes sense. And then, and is that something that the board's going to have to look at when it comes to budget time in terms of funding, or is that something that House Bill 3 provides funding for those summer programs and enrichment opportunities?
As we develop our budget and look at our programs, we look at, of course, our title dollars that can be used for that. So it's a combination, so it doesn't mean that it's going to be something that's separated out in the budget. We just look at how we need to do that, and we won't know until we start digging deeper and get into how many students, how many schools do we need to provide those services to.
Okay, great, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's, so this is primarily where the change happened? Yes. Correct? Okay. And then on the following packet pages, right, pages 31, et cetera, we have breakouts, right, for our Achieve 180 offices, the Achieve 180 program,
That's et cetera. By reading and math separately.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and by reading and math separately. So I guess my next question for Dr. Lathan is, where are we struggling the most here? Where are we getting it the most, as we look at how this data is broken out?
Would you discuss it, Ms. Stevens?
So you can see that actually we were closing the gap, or at least the gap is in a little better position when you look at packet page 31, when you look at reading and math combined for the Achieve 180 office and the Achieve 180 program. The summer slide isn't as stark here, and we also are starting at a better place with the gap at the beginning of the year this year than we were at the beginning of the year last year. So the Achieve 180 program campuses, that's where we're getting more progress. I want to say for starting at the beginning of the year when we're not having the summer slide as much, we're really trying to provide support and services to those students. You can also see when you break it out by reading, if you look at packet page 32, the reading performance there, we had a closure of the gap by 1 point. It went from 38 at the beginning of the year last year to 37. And you also see that same decrease of the gap by 1 point for the A180 program. When you look at math, you can also see some closing of the gap for the Achieve 180 office and the Achieve 180 program by 3 and 4 percentage points. So I think that's where, if you want to see where we are being more successful, I think that's where you'll see it.
Great, thank you. That's encouraging. So what is working for us with regards to reading?
The various programs that we have in place and the professional development that we're providing our teachers as it relates to our literacy in the middle, literacy by 3, literacy in the middle, and literacy empowered. We're getting ready to start the process of a literacy by 3 reboot, where we're going to be retraining our K-3 teachers, principals, teachers, and also including our special education staff so that we can make sure that we are implementing with fidelity and that we're actually truly improving outcomes for students.
Okay, great, thank you. Those are all the questions I have for this item at this time. Thanks.
Trustee Jones?
This isn't asking a question. This is just a comment about what I just heard my colleague say. It's really interesting to me as a kid who grew up poor that people think there's a one-size-fits-all. Like, what's attributed to this? Why does it happen with poor people? Well, there's a technology gap, so we may not have access to computers and stuff. There's poverty. There's transportation issues. When I got bused, my mother couldn't go to school, bring me to school. Sometimes when things are bad in our homes, we don't tell because we're scared CPS is going to take us away. So the school would literally have no idea why we're struggling. With more educated parents, I can tutor my kid, whereas someone who is not as educated can't tutor their kid. So I'm sort of befuddled that people don't understand that there are different risk factors for poor people. We're not all the same. Thank you.
Okay, I also have a question on this item. Let me pull out my list here. All right, could you just help me better understand what the target versus average gap for 2017 and 2018 is? Just on the first packet page 21, we have the blue line and we have the red line. It's just hard for me to, and maybe to help unpack for the public too, to understand what this means right here. So this is the actual goal, not the goal progress measures. So this is looking at STAR. And we put this information in because this was when it was changed to become a goal 4 as opposed to when it was a constraint. So we put it in here as the first time for you all to have seen it based on the STAR data, but it has not gone through a full cycle yet. But you can see based on the data, because when you made it a goal, we had to come up with 3 years of trend data to make sure we were meeting Lone Star governance. So you can see that we did look at the gap there. The way you all worded this goal is to look at the gap in reading and math combined and look at the gap for 5 different groups: economically disadvantaged, African American white group, Hispanic and white group, English learners and non-English learners, and students receiving special ed and students not receiving special ed. Look at all of those different gaps and then average it, and that was what you all wanted us to measure and you wanted to monitor. So that is what we have presented. Then we have tried to unpack that goal by showing information a little more detailed. When you look at page 22, then we actually, packet 22, we actually show each of the individual groups. We show the individual gaps, their performance, and then the performance across the 2 years. So it's very hard, and we had explained this when this became a goal, that when you average across all of those gaps, it's not really going to be that meaningful, that it's really going to be the table behind it that is going to give you more meaningful information, because then you're actually looking at the real data that makes up that average.
Okay, thank you. And I know based on the changes with HB3 that the sub-pops are going to be reported on as mandated by the statute. Right?
And they will be reported out separately, not averaged together as a gap.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, that's all that I have. Any other questions from my colleagues? All right. Please vote. Go ahead. Go ahead, Trustee Santos.
Thank you. And Dr. Lathan, as someone that has used Literacy Empowered, and I know I keep advocating for this, but what, if any, initiatives are we making to utilize the libraries that we do have left in the district? Just a reminder, when students get to choose their actual books, what they want to read, they go to libraries, they tangibly touch the book, they learn how to research. We are missing out on an opportunity to maximize instruction. Our kids learn to think critically when they're in a library. I know Mr. Carpenter did a piece on the libraries a couple of weeks ago, and this is something that is near and dear to my heart. And I know that to develop our budget for next year, is there something that we're missing that we could use to help people read again, help our students and teachers go back to libraries and actually utilize them so that they can use this skill in college or wherever else they're going to go?
So we're pushing for our schools to have a librarian position, or it might even use a reading specialist position. As it relates to, let's say, Literacy Empowered at the high school level, remember that's instruction within the classroom, but separate from that, like I say, your concern around the libraries, that's our concern also, and we are working, especially, I will be honest with you, going in the reverse order from high school down to elementary schools, really starting there, ensuring that we have libraries and librarians, or let's say media specialists, reading specialists, whomever, but someone that's available to help students and teachers utilize a library and utilize those resources to self-select books.
I agree with you. Thank you, Dr. Lathan. So I've been in schools where they literally have no books, and then I go to schools where, I mean, they have incredible librarians and incredible activities, and the library is the heartbeat of that school. And I did have that opportunity growing up in both in elementary, middle, and high school, even in the poor neighborhood that I still live in. But that's no longer an option for our kids in that neighborhood. And the fact that we don't have a library that our students can use in my own neighborhood is very telling of the inequities that we have, not just in HISD, but also in the city. Again, there's just one more thing that I really want to again address with my colleagues. It's something that if we have to support our administration in finding money, then we have to do it, because schools like my neighborhood school need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Jones.
Quick question. I was just wondering if any HB3 amendments affect any money related to this agenda item.
We're receiving HB3 money as it relates to literacy, being able to, so there are some requirements through HB3 as it relates to developing a district reading plan, a literacy plan, district math plan, and so that information will be presented to the board probably early spring, late spring, as we finish to start developing that plan for 2021. But a part of that plan is, like I said, the Literacy by 3 reboot. We are starting there because the focus is on early literacy.
Okay. Thank you. If there aren't any more comments from my colleagues, let's vote. Okay. 7 for, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Next agenda item that will be held for discussion is item A4. Approval of board monitoring update goal 4 progress measures 2 and 3. Trustee Sung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so this is our regularly scheduled December goal monitoring report, correct? So we have here but it's the first time that we're receiving these progress measures, correct, for 4.2 and for 4.3, because this is a new goal for us. So we're still looking at the same goal. We're looking at goal 4. And then we have here goal 4.2, goal progress measure 4.2, is that correct? And then 4.3 here in this report. And I'm kind of like walking myself through it because we haven't received a presentation on this, is that correct?
That's correct. It was scheduled for agenda review.
It was scheduled for last week, but we still have this agenda item to receive and approve this. Okay, so I want to make sure that we spend time looking at this because this is our goal progress monitoring for December. Okay, so if we could go to package page 40 then and look at the performance gap between non-ELs and ELs. So how is that gap doing? How is it doing on that gap?
On packet page 40, you can see that the gap at the beginning of the year for reading and math combined has decreased from 17 percentage points in 18-19 to 14 percentage points in 19-20. Therefore, we are on track to closing our gap. However, we are not meeting the criteria that you also put in place that all of the groups have to show increases. You can see that while the English learners are at a higher point at the beginning of the year this year compared to last year, the non-English learners are 2 percentage points lower. But we had seen that when we presented all of our beginning of the year data, we had shown that as a district we were a little bit lower at the beginning of the year this year than we were at the beginning of the year last year.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's a really positive data piece for our ELs to see that last year they grew from 35 to 45 from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and then there is a summer slide, right, and we all know the reasons why that happens. But to see that at the beginning of the year our ELs are starting from a 36 rather than a 35 a year ago, I think is a really positive data point. Of course, I'd like to see our non-ELs too retain their growth from the year, and we'll see where they end up. But for our ELs, at least, that's a piece of good news. Okay, and then as we proceed through the report and we're disaggregating that, then how does this performance gap look in our as we disaggregate by subject and by office?
So the next slide on packet page 41 shows you that for the Achieve 180 office and Achieve 180 program, the gap has decreased by 1 percentage point for both of those, mostly because the English learner performance has maintained, but the non-English learner performance has decreased by 1. Okay. And then the non-Achieve 180, the gap also increased. And the English learners, their beginning of the year performance increased. When you separate this out for reading, you go to the next one, packet page 42. You can see that the gap has decreased in reading for all students. It's maintained at a low number, 5 percentage points and 9 percentage points for the A180 office and program, and that it has also decreased for the non-Achieve 180. We did see improvements at the beginning of the year for the L students this year compared to last year in reading. We also saw similar trends in math. When you look at packet page 43, you can see that for all students, the gap is now at 14 as compared to 17 at the beginning of the year, and it's because our English learners have increased from beginning of the year from 44 to 45. We also saw those same types of improvements for the Achieve 180 office and the non-Achieve 180 office. and a little bit of a closing gap for the A180 program as well.
Okay. Thank you. So Dr. Latham, from your standpoint, with regards to serving ELs and narrowing that performance gap, what are our strengths in terms of where we're doing well, and where are we having challenges?
Chief Rodriguez, would you address that, please? Thank you.
Good evening, trustees. The areas we're doing well, we're really doing a lot more of what we're calling cross-functional training within our curriculum department. So as an example, when we are providing professional development for our leaders and our teachers in reading and in math, we're also integrating those high-yielding strategies that we utilize with our L students. So it's not just about content or the pedagogy in the content area, but it also addresses our L needs, our special education needs students as well. So we're trying to hit all our groups. It also hits our economically disadvantaged students because, of course, they're inclusive of all subgroups. So we're really trying to be a little bit more purposeful in how our approach to empowering our teachers and our leaders where instruction is concerned, and we're seeing some results here.
Thank you. And that's happening across subjects?
Yes, ma'am. Across subjects, both at elementary and secondary level.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to note also, I'll come back to 4.3, the special ed, later, but I just want to note that in the report, right, we look at the 4 components of a monitoring report. I want to note that the next steps are now being included in the superintendent's response, and I want to say thank you for that, Dr. Latham. It's good to see how we're utilizing this data and what are the next steps that we're taking. Okay, I'll give other folks a chance to discuss this item before I come back around. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from my colleagues? If not, please vote. Okay. Go ahead, Trustee Sun.
Okay, thank you. All right. So 4.3 then, right, is our, where we're looking at the gap between students who receive special education services and students who do not receive special education services. And so again, this is our first time back at page 44 that we're taking a look at this data, and we have the gap in, oh dear, the gap is in blue. So we have fairly significant gaps here. But with regards to the gap and with regards to performance, how are we doing here?
So as you indicated on packet page 44, the gap is in blue. The performance of students who are not receiving special ed services is in green. That performance is down 2 percentage points from the beginning of the year. But when you look at the purple line, which is the performance of students with disabilities, it has increased by 2 percentage points from 13 to 15 starting the beginning of the year. So that actually has decreased our gap. So the gap is down to 32 percentage points. It's still quite a large gap, but the gap is moving in the right direction. And at this point, we are on track for closing the gap, but not on track for the performance requirement of this goal because the students who are not receiving special ed services, they decreased from 49 to 47.
Okay, and we're getting caught in the same thing that overall the district, we're just coming in a little bit lower at the beginning of this year, but still some good news that for student groups that we're focused on improving performance and closing the gap for students with disabilities, that we're seeing less of a slide, we're seeing some retention from last year, and we're seeing a closure of the gap. So that's positive to see as we begin measuring and looking at this. Okay. And then as we look across different offices and programs and across subject matters, how are we doing?
So you can also see on packet page 45, we have a little bit of a closure of the gap for reading and math combined for the A180 office, the A180 program, and the non-180 program schools. So all of them are showing a decrease in the gap, specifically with increase for students with disabilities at the Achieve 180 program and for the non-Achieve 180 program schools. When you break it out by content areas, starting at packet page 46, you can see for reading, we had increases for students with disabilities across all students, the Achieve 180 office, Achieve 180 program, and the non-Achieve 180 program, which resulted in a lowering of the gap for all of those groups. We also saw decreases, though, in performance of the non-students who are not receiving special ed services. And then on packet page 47, when you look at the math performance, again, there is a gap closure for each one of the groups, the all students, the Achieve 180 office, Achieve 180 program, and for the non-Achieve 180 program, with improvements for special ed kids at the all students group and for the non-Achieve 180 program schools.
Okay, thank you. Something that I noticed here, and I know we're focused on the gaps and gap closure across these offices, but just something to notice is in terms of absolute performance, and then in terms of gaps between different programs, right? Our students with disabilities seem to be struggling more at our Achieve 180 office than they do, say, for all students, right? Or at our non-Achieve 180 program schools. And so I'm wondering, what's going on there? What do we need to understand about that? And then what are we doing to really help support our students with disabilities, especially at our Achieve 180 schools? Because when you look at, 5% of students on grade level, right? That's something that we really want to bring attention to and support improvements in.
I want to make sure I understand your question. What are we doing to support?
Yeah, I just, my heart goes out to, our students with disabilities at our Achieve 180 schools, right? When you see, 5%, right, of students that are on grade level, right, here versus for the district overall, right, it's 15%. That's another kind of gap, right, between these offices. So I'm wondering, what are we doing in particular to support students with disabilities in our Achieve 180 schools?
Dr. Verrett?
Good evening, Board, Superintendent. We are taking a targeted focus, particularly as we do our community practice visits, looking at teachers who need training around specially designed instruction, but also ensuring that teachers, general ed and special education teachers, really know the impact of the student with disability and begin to help them build skills by analyzing the data to really meet the individual specific needs of students and working with them in their PLCs.
Okay, thank you. And is it a different degree of support that we need at our Achieve 180 schools versus, I know that support's important at every school, right? But I'm wondering, is there additional resources or support that we need in our Achieve 180 schools?
What we're realizing is that we need to provide targeted, specific support, and not just to the special education teachers and the general ed, but collaboratively, training them collectively so they can begin to use the approaches in order to make sure that they're planning rigorous lessons and making sure that they're planning with designated supports and all of the accommodations and teaching them actually how to use and integrate the supports that students need.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Because something I notice, not from these particular reports, but from other data that I see, is that sometimes in our Achieve 180 schools, there are just higher percentages of students with disabilities, right? And so that greater support is needed for, as you mentioned, special education teachers, but also general ed teachers as well. So I appreciate the work that you're doing there. And it's encouraging as you've persisted in these efforts to start to see some of this paying off. So thank you. Those are my questions. Yeah.
Okay, excuse me, I'm sorry. I just have a quick question for you because I know you're the specialist here.
Okay.
And
sorry.
Are you in the queue, or are you just?
I was piggybacking.
You're done.
No, if there's somebody else.
Okay.
My button's not working.
It's not working up here, no, and I know that Trustee Dygard hasn't
for
spoken
it.
yet. You haven't spoken, and then we'll go back to Trustee Jones for your second turn on this item, or is this your first turn on this item? Okay. So Trustee Jones, Trustee Dygard, Trustee Santos. Dygard? Okay. All right. Go ahead, Trustee Dygard. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually want to go back to 4.2 because as I really dissect this a little bit, I'm noticing in many cases we're talking about summer slides. So we're looking at, when we're talking about that, the end of year for the previous year to the beginning of the year for the next year. But if you look in most cases for the EL to non-EL kids, if you could go back for the 3 years, so beginning of the year in 2017 to 2018 to 2019, for the most part, and there are some exceptions to this, you have your EL kids, they're starting the beginning of the year, it keeps stepping up. Yes. Whereas our non-EL kids are stepping down. Or maybe they went up, but now they're coming down. Right? I mean, yes, if you look at it overall, basically it's a flat line. But most of them, not all of them, most of them have ticked down this year. And so I'm looking at this, and what I'm comparing is, and for example, and I know, the aggregation of reading and math is a pretty big bucket. But the question that comes to my mind is, okay, if for the district as a whole, we're either flatlining or ticking down a little bit for non-EL kids, but we're making this steady stepping up for our EL kids, and the same trend holds true for our non-Achieve 180 schools. And in that case, we really are on the decline for the non-EL kids, but on a pretty good incline for the EL kids. But that isn't happening in this, it's the inverse for the Achieve 180 office, and both really go, it mirrors a little bit the trend for the district as a whole when it comes to the Achieve 180 program. So when I'm looking at that, and the first question that always comes to my head is why? I want to know why, what are the factors that are contributing to those trends in those different, it's the district as a whole and in those two subsets of campuses. And I recognize that the Achieve 180 program includes the Achieve 180 office campuses, correct? So it's a bigger. How many schools are in the Achieve 180 program compared to the office again? If someone will refresh my memory. I'm sorry. It's one of those that we're all sitting here saying, we're supposed to know that. Myself included. But I know it changes every year.
Yeah, so I believe it's 54.
54 in the 180 program, and how many in the 180 office? Okay.
33. 33 in the 180 office.
And I think that was actually stated at a meeting last month.
Yes.
But anyway,
it's actually in the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
It actually is listed with all of the different tiers.
That's fine. I'm just trying to figure out how big the differential was between the two.
Yep.
So it goes back to why? Like, what is happening that we're doing seemingly well, or on a upward trajectory for our EL kids in the aggregate for our district on reading and math, that mirrors what we're doing in the non-Achieve 180 campuses, but in our Achieve 180 program. So really, it's the difference. So there are about 21 campuses that shift the data between the Achieve 180 office and the Achieve 180 program, where the data doesn't parallel each other, right? So I'm trying to figure out what is going on that counts for these differences in the trend of data? Like, what are there are places where we are obviously doing really well for our EL kids, but letting the non-EL kids either not grow or dip down. So I'm just trying, like, someone unpack this for me to help me understand what's going on here that is, for our EL kids, telling a very good story.
Okay, so Chief Rodriguez spoke to that a little bit earlier. I can have her kind of repeat what she shared as it relates to the unpacking for the rest of your statement. I think we'll have to get back to you.
But do you see what I'm saying? If you compare all these different places, like there's some things going really well someplace to be, and I just want to know what that is.
Okay, I'm going to have her kind of repeat what she shared when Trustee Sung asked that question earlier. And so can you just kind of repeat what she shared as it relates to the support for our EL learners?
Yes, I'd be glad to do that. So we're doing a lot of cross-functional training in all the professional development that we're providing for not only our leaders but our teachers as well. And that's at the district level, when we send teachers to training. And then also during principals meeting, as well as at campuses during early releases, particularly at Achieve 180 schools, in our schools that we've targeted that need additional support. We also leverage our teacher development specialists. And so they are there on the booths, and as Dr. Veretz explained earlier, it is targeted support.
This is at our Achieve 180 campus.
Correct, but those practices are replicated when we do district-wide training as well. Because the same TDSs that are used to support Achieve 180 schools on a day-to-day basis also provide professional development for teachers district-wide.
Okay, but then what is the differential, what accounts for the differential between the Achieve 180 office schools and the ones that are Achieve 180 program schools that aren't the Achieve 180 office schools?
So many of the Achieve 180 office schools receive some of the same support that the schools in the Achieve 180 program receive.
Well, wouldn't the Achieve 180 office schools, those are our most struggling campuses, correct? They're a subset of the Achieve 180 program, correct?
The Achieve 180 office schools are a subset of the Achieve 180 program schools.
Yes. Right. So, for example, Wheatley is an Achieve 180 office school.
Correct.
Right?
The
Cashmere is an Achieve 180 office school.
also includes campuses that are moving, that have succeeded and are moving.
And that's what I thought. I was just clarifying that I was understanding it correctly. So then what is going on at the Achieve 180 program schools that are not Achieve 180 office schools, where they're making more growth for their EL kids than the Achieve 180 office schools?
So it's about sustainability. So we have to also think about there's a higher teacher retention at Achieve 180 program school than there might be at an Achieve 180 office school. And that's a generalized statement unless I have the data in front of me. I'm not able to tell you, a certain percentage of our Achieve 180 programs, office schools, have a higher turnover than as compared to the Achieve 180 program schools. But generally speaking, it's about sustainability.
Okay.
And then 180 program schools are doing better, so that's why they're receiving less supports. They've been in the program, in the office, they've gotten the sustained supports, and now they're moving back to their school area, their regular area offices.
Okay.
And they're doing.
So I see what you're saying now.
So these are the schools that are, you might want to say, graduating. They're moving towards being able to maintain this on their own. So these are schools that are performing a little bit better.
And what is the challenge for keeping the non-EL kids on an upward trajectory, or that has impeded the progress of them being on that upward trajectory?
Can I call a point of order? I just want to call to our attention that we have 5 board members, and not that this discussion is not important, it is important, but I want to be able to get through the entire agenda, or else stuff doesn't get approved. So.
Fair point.
Okay. And Trustee Jones, Trustee Jones did want to have the opportunity to speak. Go ahead, Trustee Jones.
swear on my mama, I'm thankful this is my last board meeting, but that's a side note. I guess I'm really frustrated that people think that all poor people, all EL people, each campus is the same. And it's just not. So and also look at facilities. I've been to the schools that are struggling. Most of those facilities are horrible. They're not happy environments. They have a bunch of stuff, and it's just harder to teach. At some of my schools that were Achieve 180, there were teachers that thought they wanted to go there, they thought they could help, and then they got there and they were overwhelmed and they just left. So if you have a teacher there that thinks they can help and then they realize that they can't and they leave, that's going to cause a deficit somewhere, and then you've got to try to fill it. And so what I'm saying is, me personally, I think that we're getting in weeds that we don't need to. These board meetings are lasting too long, and I'm just exasperated that people think that all poor people are the same, and we're just not. So, and even as between two kids whose parents may not work or not have sufficient education to maybe tutor them or afford a tutor, even between those two kids who are in the same category, they have different challenges. And I think that we need to be thankful for the gains that we're making with the kids who we have been leaving behind, right? And in this district, where there's not enough money, we basically deal with stuff on a triage method. So if we have schools that are going to trigger 1842, we try to put resources into them to try to stop that bleeding, right? And as we do that, and we have the same teacher development specialists or professional development specialists, they can't be at all the schools at the same time. And so I think that the administration doesn't get sufficient support by the board because we are asking these. So they're spending their time, there's only so many hours in a day. They're spending their time trying to explain stuff that obviously some people don't understand. When I was getting molested by, the person in my family was molesting me in our school, and I wouldn't tell them the school, and I didn't want to be taken from my parents by CPS, or I had to watch my siblings because my mother couldn't afford a babysitter, and so I didn't tell anybody that when I got home, I had all my younger brothers and sisters to watch, and that might affect my ability to study and make the best I can make it, but I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want CPS to take us, that I'm not going to tell my teacher. So there are these intangible things that you can't even account for. And so I'm just frustrated that we spend a lot of time in the board meetings and we just suck a lot of time out of the administration when they could actually be trying to focus on stuff and be precise about stuff, because they're spending all their time trying to answer these questions that there is no one answer that fits all. Because I'm ready to leave this board meeting. I am. Because we haven't voted on anything. And I'm trying to explain to people, with my personal experience, that I have a cousin who took her kids out of school for them to sell drugs, and she never helped them with their school. So obviously they had issues with school and learning, except for nobody knew that their mom had them selling drugs at 8 years old. And that's how come they can't read, because instead of studying, they're selling drugs. So you want the administration to figure all that stuff out when we know better than to tell, because we're going to get taken, and the alternative is worse, so we're going to be in foster care? I think if we get out of the administration's way, we would just be so much better. Because I just don't understand why we don't understand that there's no, even as between campuses, and even as between kids at the same campuses. We're a policy-making board. We're not a weeds board. We don't tell the administration how principals should be evaluated. That's violating governance. And I'm so thankful I'm getting off this board, because it's exasperating. And then it drives people who really want to help and be a part of the solution away, because they don't want to be here for 12 hours I'm looking at the faces of the people in the audience. They looking like me. Like, what is really going on? So that's my 2 cents. But can we, if we want to talk about this stuff, and I don't want to stop my colleagues who have other questions and say, and even like when your parents don't even speak English, or maybe they're not educated, or maybe they're undocumented, and they're not going to seek resources because they're afraid that they're going to lose their parents, and they're not going to tell you that they're undocumented or that their parents are undocumented. So there are all these things, and so I don't have that problem in my black third ward family, right? But somebody in the same school as me might have that problem. So can we put this to the end of the agenda and get with the voting for stuff so I can leave and y'all can keep talking about this? After I vote on stuff that needs to be voted on?
Thank you. Trustee Santos, do you have any further comment on this agenda item?
I'm just going to submit it as a question. Dr. Verrett, it was going to go towards you. But I remember the first time that that my rose-colored glasses came off in teaching. It was when I had an English learner in my classroom, and he was identified as an English learner, but he was a student with a disability. And I was just wondering what we're doing, what supports there are for professional development, if any, to be able to differentiate between or prepare our teachers to be able to identify students with disabilities that are just thrown into English learning in the ELO classrooms because they don't speak the English. So if I could, Dr. Verrett, how do we do that? So just that's a referral?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for indulging us in conversation on student outcome data for this evening. We do appreciate it. We understand these items were moved to this meeting this week. We were supposed to have had discussion last week, and we're having it tonight. So thank you, colleagues. Thank you, administration, for being prepared to talk about this. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and please vote on item A4.
Thank you.
Okay. 5-4, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Thank you. Okay. The next item held for discussion is item B2, receive and act on report recommendations from Board Audit Committee. If anybody has anything they'd like to add, I'm going to go ahead and speak as the audit chair on this agenda item. Every year in December, at the end of the year, we submit a written summary report of our activity over the course of the year. You'll find that handwritten report, or not handwritten, but the typed report, as backup to the agenda item for approval. We talk about our attendance. We had, and I do want to acknowledge my colleagues who are on the audit committee, Trustee Dygard and Trustee Sung, who have been committed to putting in the sweat equity to continue to build up and strengthen this committee. And as far as what we have here listed in the report, we have our attendance. We've had perfect attendance for every single one of our meetings this year. We had 6 meetings. We met every other month. Next year, we recommend that we meet on a quarterly basis, so we will scale back on those meetings as well. We have a summary of our audit committee work, and you have the written report, so you can go ahead and read those pieces. We have an update from the Internal Audit Department, our Chief Audit Executive, as part of this as well, along with the audits that have been conducted to date. And we also have put together some recommendations for consideration for next year, along with a recommended calendar of activities and deliverables for 2020. I would like to open up the floor to my colleagues for any questions or comments. It's been a pleasure working with you, and we are committed to continuing the work. Thank you. Trustee Dygard.
Just a really quick comment that one of the things that we added in the recommendations for next year's audit committee was to appoint a member of the community to the committee in accordance with the audit charter. That gives us the opportunity to have someone with finance or audit background from the public be on this committee. And you'll note that there's an asterisk that we may have to adjust the calendar if necessary to accommodate, reviewing applications and speaking with any potential candidates to do that. But otherwise, I think we have spent the last 2 years really building an incredibly strong foundation of work. We met a whole lot last year, but it was to really onboard ourselves, I think, to this work and create a system that we can pass forward that will provide and hopefully build public trust to our audit process. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Sung, then Trustee Adams.
I'd like to thank my colleagues, Trustee Finkelzig and Trustee Dygard, who have served alongside me the last 2 years on this committee. I'm really grateful for the work that our Chief Audit Executive has done, Mr. Garland Blackwell, in building up his department. I also want to thank Dr. Lathan and the entire administration for your support, because the audit department is only effective if it helps us improve what we do across this district. I want to call out to my colleagues, one of the recommendations the committee is bringing forward is that we consider changing out one member of the committee this coming year. I think there's value to continuity on the committee. That's why in following IIA best practice and following our charter, there are 2-year staggered terms in the committee, but to continue that stagger and to increase the number of board members who have experience serving on the committee, I think it would be really good to get some new blood in that committee. So for colleagues continue on the board, for new colleagues who will be joining the board, I hope that somebody will consider joining the committee. Thank you.
Trustee Adams.
Thank you. I want to ask for a point of personal privilege, if I may. I wanted just to take this opportunity to thank 2 of my colleagues, because I have an engagement in a few minutes that I need to get to. And I want to just thank Trustee Jolanda Jones and Trustee Rhonda Skillen-Jones for their years of service on the HISD board. I will miss them dearly, their voice, their passion, their commitment, their dedication, and everything that the value that they've brought to this board. And I did not want to leave without telling both of them thank you. I know that they have great futures on the horizon, and I look forward to continuing serving with them on wherever their destinations may lead them. And to Ms. Carla, I know I gave my kudos to you last week, but I'm not going to cry today. I'm stronger today. And I want to thank you so much for your service, for what you have done. And I just want to wish all the teachers, the staff, and everyone a happy holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and may you be blessed during this season. May you be protected during this season, and that no harm come to any of you or your families, and that all of you will be blessed. So I just want to take this moment and say, Trustee Jones, Trustee Skillen-Jones, for your dedicated commitment and service on this board and all that you have done to make it better. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity for this point of personal privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope you feel better and happy holidays.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay. No other questions in the queue? Okay. We're going to go ahead and please vote on item B2. All right. We need Trustee... Me. 5-4-0 against 0 abstentions. Thank you. Next item held is I4B. I4B. And it's the approval of 2019 tax rule. I actually had one, no, I just had one question. On packet page 40, the anticipated collection rate was 98.56% for the upcoming year. Just wondering what the actual tax rate collected was this past year and what you expect it to be. That's it.
We can get that information to you.
Okay, referral. Cool. Any other discussion? Questions? Yes.
I just have a quick question. Isn't this document drafted by somebody else and you have to go to them to get the answer?
I'm sorry?
this is from somebody else, so you're going to have to go to somebody else to get the answer to that? This number 40, package page 40, it says, yeah. Well, I'm just saying, this document that we're looking at is not drafted by HSD, it's drafted by the taxing authority, right?
That's correct. That's coming from the tax assessor collector. That number that is sent to us by the tax assessor collector has to be presented to the governing board for approval.
So to get the actual collected rate from this past year?
No, that's a number that we can get. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, please vote. 5-4-0 against, 0 abstentions. Next item held for discussion is item I-6, authority to negotiate and to execute interlocal agreement with the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance Lead Agency Region 14 Education Service Center. And I just had one quick question on this also. So entering into this interlocal cooperative purchasing agreement, does that mean that, and this is for both goods and services, does that mean that for goods or possibly services that exceed $100,000, they'll be brought back to the board for approval?
So this is just a historical contract that we've always had, an interlocal agreement. So all we're asking is to reestablish. There's been a name change, so just to reestablish. But yes, of course, we will always bring back the board items, anything over $100,000.
That's it. Thank you. Please vote. Okay. 5-4-0 against, 0 abstentions. Okay, we are now ready to consider the balance of today's agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the balance of today's agenda by consensus? Do I have a second? Are there any other comments or questions from my colleagues? If not, please vote. Five, 4-0 against, 0 abstentions. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting of October 15, 2019, the hearing held on October 17, 2019, the board meeting held on November 14, 2019, the special meeting held on November 18, 2019, and the special meeting held on November 21, 2019? Is there a second? Any discussion? Please vote. 3-4-0 against, 2 abstentions. We're now ready to consider items discussed in executive session. Are there any motions?
I move that the board authorize the district to settle the subrogation lien of Mark Hudson against Julia Erazo and Allstate Insurance for workers' compensation benefits. Allstate Insurance claim number 055-063-4760 on the terms discussed in closed session effective December 13th, 2019.
So moved. Second. Please vote.
I move that the board, do you have to call it?
For which one? Oh, yes, 4-0 against, 1 abstention. Thank you.
I move that the board authorize the district to settle the subrogation lien of Leah Berry against Metro Clean Commercial Building Services and the Hartford Insurance for workers' compensation benefits. The Hartford Insurance claim number GI001-819-4362 on the terms discussed in closed session effective December 13th, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
Yes. Please vote. 4-0 against, 1 abstention.
I move that the board approve a finding of no good cause for educators to resign or abandon employment contracts without district consent under sections 21.105C, 21.160C, or 21.210C of the Texas Education Code as discussed in closed session, and authorize the interim superintendent or her designee to submit a written complaint to SBEC to impose sanctions effective December 13th, 2019.
Second.
Please vote. 4-0 against, 1 abstention.
I move that the board approve closed session personal agenda item 34 as discussed in closed session effective December 13th, 2019.
Please vote. 4 for, 2 abstentions, 0 against.
I move that the board approve the balance of the closed session personnel agenda, including specifically that the board approve proposed terminations of continuing term and probationary contracts, that the board approve proposed non-renewals of term contracts, that the board approve issuance of fourth-year probationary contracts, and authorize the interim superintendent or designated to provide notice of the same, that the board approve separation and release agreements, that the board approve withdrawals of contract recommendations, and any reissuance of the same, that the board approve issuance of final orders on contract termination and non-renewals as discussed in closed session effective December 13th, 2019.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, please vote. 4 for, 0 against, 1 abstention. Trustee Skiller and Jones? 5 for, 0 against, 1 abstention.
No further motions.
Okay. We've now come to the portion of our meeting for the hearing of the community. We're glad you are here and look forward to hearing your views. Only those registered by 9:30 a.m. today may speak this evening. Copies of handout materials must have been provided to board services by 9:30 a.m. today. We have 5 speakers registered this evening. The total time allotment for hearing of the community shall not exceed 30 minutes. Speakers during the hearing of the community shall be limited to 2 minutes each. I'd like to remind speakers that when addressing the board, please stay on topic and refrain from naming individuals, especially students, as they are protected under the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. However, naming your own child is permissible in the course of stating your concern. Please understand that this public forum does not allow for dialogue with board members. The board cannot deliberate or respond directly to a speaker in this format. So that each person who has signed up to speak can be heard by the board, we ask that there be no disruption of the meeting by members of the audience, no abusive statements or actions, no threats of confrontation, no audible expressions by the audience of approval or disapproval. Should a speaker drift from the stated subject or become disruptive or abusive, the speaker shall be given 1 warning. If a second warning is required, then the speaker shall forfeit the remaining time allotment for the current meeting, any allotment for any meeting within the next 30 days, and may be removed from the meeting. We ask that you please speak directly into the microphone. The clock on the wall to your right and on the podium will count down your time and will signal when your time is up. I ask that you please respect our procedures and the other speakers in the end and end your remarks promptly when your time has expired. Would Barbara Garza please come to the podium? Also, would Consuelo Garza, Diego McKenna Borrero, and Sister Mama Sonia please come to the front and sit in reserved seats 1, 2, and 3 in the order in which I called you. This is the order in which you will speak. Once a person at the podium is finished speaking, Speaker 1, please move to the podium, and Speaker 2 and 3 will move down respectively. Please state your name when you come to the podium. First speaker, Barbara Garza.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Garza. I am, regardless of this is about Milby High School, the principal of Ms. Reese, and the team instruction and the counselor. My daughter is in 9th grade. She has problems with her and everything. So when she is a visual runaway, this is what I call. The last time when she ran away on October 29th. On October 29th, I found her and I returned her back to school and everything. When I returned her, the principal, Mr. Janet, and the team instruction, and Ms. Reese, they evaluated her. There was not a next person. Mr. Harris, the officer Harris, was there, present there with the body camera. When I asked them, I stayed there for 3 hours. They were talking to her and everything. This what goes on. Ms. Reese called me in the office and she told me, Ms. Garza, and I said, yes, ma'am. She goes, I don't think you should expose yourself to multiple guys. This is coming from the main principal, telling me that I put my life on hold for 6 years for my kids. And if she tells me that is not right for somebody to tell Annette about. That is a single mom, that I have a son who's a cancer patient. And this is how much I have to go through. And these are the records. Every time that I go to talk to someone, when I find out what's going on with my daughter, I'm concerned of my kids' education. One day, she's in special ed department. And when she asked her, how's her day? She said, Mommy, I can't.
Thank you. Thank you. So somebody's going to talk to you right now when you step away from the podium. Somebody from the administration will address your concern. Thank you. Okay. Consuelo Garza.
Yes, good morning. My name is Consuelo Garza, and I have raised 5 grandkids, and all of them have graduated. I got one grandson that's in basketball. What I want to know is why does Milby doesn't have funds to provide bus transportation when they have a game? On November the 21st, the 22nd, they had a game, and they were told that they had to find their own transportation. So I want to know why Milby doesn't have funds to provide this. And this is barely their second game. I'm a taxpayer, and I pay school taxes. And there's a lot of other issues that people need to go out and check at Milby, because that's my daughter Barbara that just spoke. Now, I don't think the principal has a right to tell her that she shouldn't have a bunch of men going in and out of her house when they don't know her business. And that should not have been said at all. And I was going to go back and address that principal, but my daughter said, no, Mom, just leave it alone. I've had 2 kids that graduated from Milby. I have 3 that graduated from Chavez and 2 that have graduated from Deer Park. And I'm trying to push the rest of my grandkids about how they're going to go to a school when their parents, they cannot be judged. Like Ms. Jones said, not everybody has luxury. And she's been a single parent all her life. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Diego McKenna Borrero.
Good evening. I believe that HIC could spend a lot less money on transportation. With a simple Google search, I found out that HIC consists of 214,175 students. Approximately 36,000 of those use the HIC transportation services as a means of getting to and from school. That figure was taken from the HIC official webpage. That means that only 16.8% of all of HIC students use the budget up that is meant for the entire district. I don't know HIC's exact budget for transportation. I realize I would have to submit an open records request, but I'm sure that budget could get cut significantly. Houston holds one of the best public transportation systems with its metro services. As a student that uses the metro every day to get to and from school, as well as it being my main mode of transportation to all of my activities, I can attest that the metro is fast, reliable, and fast, reliable, and effective mode of transportation. As a student, I only pay 60 cents for each ride, with a daily cost of $1.20. If HIC were to fund that 16.8% of students for their rides, the total budget would amount to $7,473,600, and I'm sure that figure is significantly less than the current transportation budget. Even if HIC were to fund 25% of their students to take the metro, that figure would amount to $11,115,682.50. The funds that would be saved by funding metro transportation services instead of HIC transportation services could go to improving the nutrition at HIC, as my associate Gabriel spoke about earlier. Aside from the financial benefits that funding metro would provide, the students as well as HIC would lead much less stressful lives. I know from experience that the beginning of the school year is an extremely stressful time, and rarely does the transportation on the first day of school work properly. Buses come late, some show up to incorrect locations, students and parents are confused, and that all adds to the stress of it being the first day of school. The metro works non-stop year-round, and it is highly reliable. Unlike the HISD bus, which comes once to a stop, the metro comes at the very most once every 30 minutes, which allows students to be more flexible and have ownership of when they get to school. Taking the metro teaches students.
Thank you. Next, we have Sister Mama Sonia and Dr. Pamela Boveland.
Good evening. This is probably the last time we'll get a chance to talk to all of you at one time.
We have been going to the meetings. We're totally against the TEA takeover. As a voter, I do not want to be disenfranchised. As a black woman, being disenfranchised is just horrible. I really don't know what to say. I've been coming up here for the last, I don't know, my daughter's 27, since she's been in the 6th grade, talking to you all, not you all, but the body. I want you all to be here. I want an elected board to be here. Those of you who are going, it's been a rough ride. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed talking to you all, and I thank you all. In spite of our differences, I still thank each and every one of you for what you have done. We know the board takeover is nothing about, this is a blue board, this is a minority board. Women, minorities. This is the first time. TEA only takes over minority boards. They don't take over white men boards or boards that are majority white, because we've done our research. So we just want to say that, I want to say that I want to see some change. I hope with the new board that comes in, whatever the board is, that they will take care of us, because we don't need any more fussing and fighting and bickering and all of that stuff. But you know what? I'd rather have a fighting board amongst each other that we put in than somebody like that man in Austin's going to put in. So I want to say thank you. And I also want to say we still have not addressed what I consider the elephant in the room. That is Delmar Stadium. For a long time we thought Delmar meant of the sea, not being named after one of the most racist board members we ever had. I really hate that you all have not been able to do that. Those who will be left, please change Delmar Stadium. Our children should not be subjected.
Thank you. Dr. Pamela Bovlin.
Well, this is the last time I'll get to talk to some of y'all. And as Sister Mama Sonia said, we have been here regularly, and we have unfortunately been attending the community meetings that AJ's been holding. And it's amazing to me how well he can lie. He lies with a straight face. It is absolutely incredible. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but he's very calm and he cannot be ruffled. And trust me, I did try to ruffle him. And it was amazing how he lied. He lied about y'all. He lied about his past experiences and taking over other school districts. He took credit for, working with the board, and if the people didn't work with him and his coaching, then he would, replace them, because, he can't coach them forever. He's coaching these people who aren't board members to be board members. But he doesn't plan on coaching them forever. And they get here and they're out in 5 years. We are fighting. We're fighting with y'all. I hope to see y'all at the rally on January 9th. Ugh, almost forgot the date. It'll be right out there. It'll be easy to find. I hope you show up. We're trying to get a lot more political people involved, because this is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and we're just not going to put up with it. We're going to go down fighting. We might get knocked out, but we're going to go down with a fight. They're going to know they've been in one. So I appreciate all of you, and I am so happy that we are fighting. I'm glad HISD and the Teachers Union got together and we're fighting. But I can't believe how horrible this is. I can't believe what Republicans are willing.
Thank you. Okay, we are now ready to hear reports and comments from board members. Starting at my right, Trustee Skillen-Jones.
And I can tell you in advance, I'm going to request for extended time. 8 years of board service has had its ups and downs, but out of all that, it's been worth it. Despite the challenges we face, every year I stand on the stage at graduation and shake kids' hands and look in their eyes and ask them what their plans are. And that gets me through the next year. During my 8 years here, we've accomplished a lot. Magnets in underserved areas banned suspension K through 2, which went on to become state law, ended the alternative pipeline to prison contract, and established the restorative justice school, put psychologists and social workers where they'd never been before, renamed Confederate schools, implemented the wraparound services model, raised the minimum wage, banned school closures, built new schools in historically black and brown neighborhoods, passed an employee anti-bullying policy, and made many strides for our teachers and our unions. That's just some of the things we've done. I don't claim to take credit for all of that. It took a team. And when I say a team, that means board members, both past and present. Despite the sometimes thankless job, little of the public realizes the number of hours that we spend studying data, meeting, reading, holding community meetings, while also having full-time jobs, managing our families, defending ourselves, interacting with students and faculty, battling media depictions that are intentionally misleading and crafted for sensationalism. The time we spend away from our own children to sacrifice for others. Our family sacrifices, sometimes it doesn't seem worth it. The zero pay that the majority of the public doesn't even realize we get. But in the end, when you win small battles, because we haven't won the war, it makes it worth it, because kids matter, and so do people. I want to not just thank my colleagues on this board, but all the colleagues around the state of Texas who are constantly under assault while serving in this capacity. We are the only elected body in the state of Texas who is regulated by another elected body. We do not have the freedoms to legislate in the way that we think we should, although we are the ones on the front line most closest to the districts, the kids, and the people. I want to thank the senior cabinet members, and I'm going to call you name by name because I think the names bear repeating. Sylvia Tran, Yolanda Rodriguez, Rebecca Suarez, Renee Barajas, Julia Dimmitt, Brian Busby, Paul Cordova, Rick Cruz, Scott Gilhausen, Anita Hutchins-Taylor, Felicia Adams, Stacey Taylor, Cesar Martinez, Giovanni Ponce, Nicole Moore, James McSwain. In your presence or your absence, we thank you, or I thank you. The middle management, the SSOs, our lead principals, our principals who hold our schools together, our teachers who are under assault daily across this nation, the most undervalued employees, underpaid employees, because no one gets anywhere unless they go through a teacher in some form of education. Our custodial staff, our administrative staff, our food service staff, our bus drivers, every person in Hattie Mae White, our department staff, our board services staff, Lisa, David, and Garland. Each of you are an integral part of the team, because without you, there is no team, it doesn't work. Our kids cannot be serviced without every function that we have in some way. So each of you who get up every day, despite the circumstances, and continue to do this because you love our district and you love our kids, I appreciate that. Despite the national trend to privatize and the national trend to publicly assault education to make us all look bad, we persevere because our kids deserve what our Constitution in Texas guarantees them, a right to a free public education. Particularly in urban school districts, we face challenges that they don't face in other districts. Yet, we still have an 88% rating. And for that, everybody who contributes to that deserves a pat on the back. To our superintendent, I have learned so much from your resilience, your patience, your integrity, and being the person that you are under the fire you've been under. You make that walk look easier than I know it has to be. I appreciate you, not just for your professionalism and your skill sets, but for showing me what it means to handle what you've handled with grace. I'm in a runoff, in a race that's been contentious, where my character has been assaulted, and because of you, I handled it much differently than I would have a year ago. I appreciate your example. I appreciate that we didn't have an 88 when you came, but we have that now. Our bond rating, our financial rating is still an A+, despite the years we had to endure recapture. So from my heart, on behalf of my kid who was in this district under your tenure, thank you. Not just as a board member, but as a parent. And as a parent, I thank each and every one of you who does this every day. Long after I'm gone, you will still be here fighting for our kids, and I want you to know you are in my prayers every day. To my new board members, I hope you get a chance to serve the people that put you in office, because I think you worked for that and you deserve that. Thank you to my colleagues, to each and every one of you here tonight, to each and every one of you in this district. It has been my honor and my privilege to serve the children of HISD, and they will always, and you will always forever be in my hearts and on my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Skillen-Jones. Well, that's a tough act to follow. My remarks for tonight are much briefer. First of all, I want to thank all of my colleagues who have served on this board, Trustee Skillen-Jones, Dr. Lita, Trustee Jones, and Trustee Davila. Thank you very much for your service and for the work that you do. And I wish you all the best going forward. I also want to thank every single employee in Houston ISD. HISD is in the news all the time now. Most of it is not positive, although there is a lot of positive news and work happening. And I want everybody in HISD, every employee, to know that we see the hard work that day in, day out Team HISD is doing for our kids. We see the wins that happen every single day in our classrooms. That work matters, and I am more grateful than ever for the work that each and every employee of HISD is doing, from our superintendent down to every single teacher, paraprofessional, custodian, bus driver on the front lines each day. Thank you for the work, and I'm going to continue to be focused on what we need to do to serve our students, and I know that all of Team HISD will be as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I too just want to be brief. Say thank you so much, Trustee Skillen-Jones, Trustee Jones, Trustee Davila, and Trustee Lita. It's a hard job. I don't know why anybody would want to do it, but I'm grateful to serve our kids and our communities. I have a list of updates that I'd like, but I'm just going to submit them as referrals and say to our students, teachers, faculty, staff, all of HISD, thank you so much for everything that you do on a daily basis. You're severely underpaid. That's one of my questions here. But yeah, just happy holidays and be safe out there. Thank you.
Trustee Jones?
So I want to thank HISD's administration, because you guys have a thankless job. You've done a fantastic job. And I support you in my words and my actions. I want to congratulate the new trustees, Cruz and Hernandez. I supported y'all, and I went out to the polls and worked for you, right? I hope you look at our meetings and learn how not to be board members. And I hope you give the superintendent and her team a chance, because everyone on this team is important. Teachers, support staff, and administrators, right? And I hope that you don't pit groups within HISD against each other. I hate that the last year and a half that I've spent more of my time trying to stop bad things from happening than to be able to work with the administration and provide more good things. But District 4 is better after I left, so I did what I was supposed to do. So passing the torch to you. And the administration, they know what they're doing. And Carla Stevens, you are awesome. You are a numbers cruncher, and you know what you do. And I know you're ready to go do some vacations after staying at these board meetings. And I'm so thankful for the families and the kids, and I'm thankful I got this opportunity. It wasn't the most pleasant, but my grandmother said if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. And I learned a lot. So thank you. And finally, if you guys need me for anything, Team HISD, I'm happy to help you. You know, you may not want it, but the offer's out there.
So I want to echo my thanks to Trustee Skillern-Jones, Trustee Lira, Trustee Davila, and Trustee Jones for your service on the HISD School Board, and also to Ms. Stevens, although I don't see her. And congratulations to our two incoming board members. And I'm going to be really short. I just wish for everybody to be blessed with the freedom to celebrate the holidays of their choice or celebrate nothing at all this winter, and to enjoy your winter break. Thank you.
And again, I do want to say thank you to Trustee Jones, Trustee Skillern-Jones, Trustee Davila, Trustee Lira for your service here. I've learned a lot from you, Rhonda, and also Trustee Jones as stepping in as incumbents, and Trustee Davila when I joined the board. And I am just really honored to have had the opportunity to serve alongside you, and I know that it hasn't been easy by any means, but it's been a learning experience, and I know that the kids have been front and center always, and I want to thank you for your service. Thank you. I hope that everybody has a happy holiday season and that we have a wonderful new year. I look forward to serving with some new colleagues that are both here in the audience and with my peers in the new year. Thank you so much. Thank you, administration. Thank you, Dr. Lathan, for all of your work. We appreciate it. We're now ready to, Madam Superintendent, do you have any reports for us at this time?
I just want to thank the trustees also for their service. Thank you for your continued support of the students and staff at HISD. I want to wish all of our staff a happy holidays, and I want to also say a special thanks to Dr. Ken Davis and our Roses and ATM department for a wonderful winter ball on last night, and all the staff members that helped provide dresses and suits for our young men and young ladies that they were able to take home with them. Once again, happy holidays to all of our staff. You know the rules during the holiday season, rules of non-engagement. You are to rest, enjoy your families, take care of yourselves. And so rules of non-engagement, trustees, in case you're not aware, when the district closes on next Friday, December 20th, we are shut down for 2 weeks and staff are not engaging in district business unless it's an emergency. Best wishes for a great holiday and a happy new year.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you at our next regular board meeting on January 16th, 2020. There being no further business, this meeting is officially adjourned at 7:44 p.m.